Violence didn't begin with war. It didn't start with kings or borders or empires. It started with something far more ancient and far more personal. Long before cities, before written words, before we even called ourselves Homo sapiens, there was a moment. One human, flesh and blood just like us, raised a weapon and struck down another. No gods, no politics, just rage, or fear, or something we can't name. And we didn't even know it happened until scientists dug 40 feet into the earth and found a skull with two holes. Two perfect, deliberate holes, screaming one silent question across nearly 500,000 years. Was this humanity's first murder? In northern Spain, buried deep within the limestone heart of the Atapuerca Mountains, there's a cave called Sima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones. It's one of the most haunting places ever discovered. 30 meters underground, pitch black, airless, forgotten. And inside, bones. Thousands of them. The remains of at least 28 early humans, thought to be Homo heidelbergensis, our long-lost ancestors. Among them, a skull, catalogued as Skull 17. And this skull would go on to tell the oldest murder mystery ever unearthed. It wasn't an animal attack, not a cave collapse, not an accident, because Skull 17 had not one, but two fractures above the left eye socket, both made with the same object, both delivered with the same force, same angle, same depth. Two strikes, no hesitation, and they didn't heal, which means the victim never stood up again. This wasn't hunting, it wasn't self-defense, it was deliberate, cold, human. We don't know his name, we don't know what he looked like, but we know what he did. Somewhere in Spain, 430,000 years ago, inside a cold, stony pit called Sima de los Huesos, he struck. Twice. The blows were brutal. Precision hits to the forehead. The victim? A young adult, possibly male. His skull, specimen cranium 17, was shattered with intent. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a fall. It was personal. Scientists scanned the skull, reconstructed the fractures, ran simulations. Everything pointed to one thing: murder. But here's the twist. This wasn't a modern human. It was a Homo heidelbergensis, our ancestor, a species halfway between us and Neanderthals. He had language, crude tools, fire, maybe. But he also had something darker: impulse, rage, reason. Because murder isn't just violence, it's calculation. To kill like this, with force and aim, means one thing. He thought about it. So the question is, what pushed him? Jealousy, revenge, a power struggle over food, or love? This was a species on the edge of cognition, capable of care, they buried their dead, but also capable of death, intentional, targeted, final. And this killing wasn't in the heat of battle. No chaos, no multiple wounds, just two strikes, clean, deliberate. He didn't flee. He placed the body into the pit, alongside dozens of others. A grave or a dumping ground. Because Sima de los Huesos isn't just any cave. It holds the remains of 28 individuals, all dead, all dismembered, all carefully discarded in the same place. What kind of society does that? A community that mourns, or a culture that eliminates? The first murder was more than blood on stone. It was a mirror, held up to us. Because when we look at that fractured skull, we're not just looking at the victim, we're staring into the eyes of the first killer, and he looked a lot like us. Deep beneath the earth, at the end of a treacherous shaft 13 meters down, lies Sima de los Huesos. To get there, even today, scientists must crawl through narrow tunnels, descend into darkness, and inch through cracks that would terrify the calmest minds. But hundreds of thousands of years ago, someone went there on purpose, and they carried bodies. Not one, not two, 28. Some were teenagers, others full-grown adults. A few were children. All of them, Homo heidelbergensis. No predator could have dragged them there. No natural disaster could have swept them into that abyss. They were placed, lowered, dropped, disposed, carefully or callously. It's one of the oldest burial sites ever found. But here's the unsettling part. No grave goods, no flowers, no offerings, just bones, stacked, cracked, and broken. Almost every skull bears fractures. Worn teeth hint at a hard life. And then there's cranium 17, the murder victim, his face split open by twin blows. It wasn't a battlefield. There's no evidence of disease, no sign of a cave collapse or flood. So who were these people? A family? A clan? A doomed group of exiles? And why were they all brought to this one place? One theory says they were mourned. This was proto-human ritual, a sacred site, the dawn of burial culture. But another theory, it whispers of elimination, of infighting, of those who lost power, lost favor, or posed a threat. Maybe Sima wasn't a grave. Maybe it was a tomb of political cleansing. Imagine the scene. A man, strong, dominant, rules his group. But behind him, whispers grow. A rival emerges. Tensions rise. Until finally, someone cracks. Literally. The first murder, followed by more. Then silence. And one by one, the bodies begin to appear in the pit, like secrets being buried, out of sight, out of history. But they didn't vanish. They waited, for nearly 500,000 years, until we found them. Bones don't lie, they remember. It's easy to imagine the Sima de los Huesos as sacred, a cavern deep in the heart of a Spanish mountain, where bodies were placed with eerie consistency, one after another, over centuries. A place chosen not for convenience, but for meaning. To reach it, someone had to trek through a winding, treacherous cave, descend steep chimneys, and navigate complete darkness for over 13 meters. Not exactly your neighborhood graveyard. And yet, there they were. 28 bodies, all deliberately placed. None of them buried in the traditional sense. No tools, no offerings, no fire. Just bones and silence. So, what was it? The earliest funeral chamber in history, or something far more disturbing? Let's dig deeper. The site dates back 430,000 years, long before Homo sapiens walked the earth. These people were early ancestors of Neanderthals, possibly their direct precursors. They were intelligent, social, and capable of abstract thought. But here's where it gets strange. Nearly every body found was missing something vital. The arms and legs had been moved post-mortem. Some skulls were fractured in ways that didn't match simple cave collapses or accidents. And then, there was cranium 17. 2 clean fractures on the frontal bone, both inflicted from above, with the same object. A precise, brutal strike, blunt force trauma. And forensic analysis confirmed, this was intentional. This was a killing blow. So now we have 2 puzzles. First, who killed this individual? And second, why was the body brought here? Let's consider the first possibility, that this was in fact a funeral chamber. In that case, we're looking at the earliest evidence of symbolic behavior, a kind of ritual, primitive, yes, but still evidence of respect for the dead. The deliberate transportation of corpses into a hidden pit suggests cognitive depth, an understanding of death, perhaps even grief. That would make Sima de los Huesos a sacred place, a place where death was acknowledged, not ignored, where the dead were carried, not discarded. But what if it wasn't that? What if it was a secret? What if this wasn't a grave, but a garbage dump for bodies? Think about it. No signs of ceremony, no flowers, no grave goods, no red ochre, no carvings. Just a pit filled with bones, stacked, absent of order, some shattered, some scattered. It's hard not to consider the darker option, that the Sima wasn't a shrine, but a cover-up. Maybe they weren't honoring the dead. Maybe they were hiding them, a clan feud, a social betrayal, a power grab. The victim, Cranium 17, might have been a rival, or a leader, or just someone in the way. And the rest? Collateral. Maybe this was a site where internal disputes were resolved, with rocks instead of reason. This changes everything, because if true, the Sima de los Huesos isn't a place of mourning. It's a scene of organized disposal. A cave not of peace, but of power. And if that's the case, then we have to ask, was Cranium 17 the first murder, or just the first one caught? Because bones can lie still for 500,000 years. but they still whisper. And if you listen close enough, you can almost hear the echoes of footsteps in the dark, carrying the dead deeper into the mountain, not out of love, but out of fear. And we're left with one haunting truth. Before there was writing, before there was fire, before there was even us, there was already violence.
Born to kill? Let's zoom out for a while. We like to believe that humans are born innocent, that violence is taught, that hatred is learned, that monsters are made, not born. But the pit of bones doesn't care what we believe. Because deep beneath the surface of the earth, in that cold Spanish cave, lie the remains of our ancestors, mangled, shattered, discarded. Victims of violence, victims by violence. And it happened long before empires, before war drums, before civilization could offer excuses. This wasn't political. This wasn't about religion. This was ancient, primal. It shakes the foundations of how we understand ourselves. Because if they, those early hominins, Homo heidelbergensis, were already killing each other 430,000 years ago, then maybe violence isn't an accident. Maybe it's an inheritance. Think about it. Most species fight to survive, to feed, to protect. But humans? We fight for more, for ideas, for pride, for revenge, even for no reason at all. And the deeper scientists dig into our past, the clearer it becomes. Our capacity for violence isn't new. It may be the oldest thing about us. From Cain and Abel to world wars, from playground bullies to genocide, there's a pattern, a dark fingerprint that appears again and again across human history. And now, thanks to ancient genetics and archaeology, we can trace that fingerprint back in time. Before Neanderthals, before Homo sapiens, to the twilight zone of proto-humans, the moment we stood upright. We were already carrying something heavy, not in our hands, in our DNA, the capacity to kill. It's not just about weapons, or anger, or survival. It's about wiring. The amygdala, the limbic system, the ancient fight-or-flight machinery of the brain. These parts have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. We like to think of ourselves as logical, but peel back the skin, open the skull, and there it is. A beast, still breathing. And that beast remembers the cave. It remembers the blood, the betrayal, the first scream. We didn't evolve out of violence. We evolved with it. So now ask yourself, when was the first murder in human history? Was it 430,000 years ago? Or did it happen before language, before memory? What if we'll never know? Because the first murder was never recorded. It was simply repeated.
Now let's zoom back in. We've seen possibly the first murder in human history, but how this violence became a norm in human society. How archaeologists found evidences of mass murders. Talheim, Germany. A peaceful stretch of farmland, green and quiet. But buried beneath it, 34 human skeletons, packed into a shallow trench. A group, massacred. Most had crushed skulls. Some had injuries to the spine, likely struck from behind as they fled. They didn't die fighting. They died running. Archaeologists found no weapons, no signs of defense. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter, and it didn't happen just once. Because across Europe, from Germany to Austria, Hungary to France, over 200 mass graves tell the same story. In Schoneck-Kilianstaaten, the skeletons showed methodical blows to the side of the head, each one precise, efficient. In Aspern-Schletz, they weren't just killed, they were mutilated, limbs smashed, bones shattered. The dead were stacked like refuse. But the most disturbing detail is not how they died, it's who died. Again and again, it's men and children. But the young women? Gone. Not buried. Not found. Just missing. This strange absence isn't random. It's repeated across dozens of sites. And together, they suggest something truly terrifying. These massacres weren't just driven by rage or revenge. They were strategic. The men were exterminated. The women captured. Their bloodlines wouldn't die. They'd be overwritten. And if you think that sounds too organized for Neolithic tribes with stone tools and no writing, look again. Because around this same time, 95% of all male Y chromosomes vanish from the human gene pool. A genetic genocide. And now, we see the bones to match it. What were these people fighting for? Land, food, power, or something deeper? Some researchers believe the answer lies in how Neolithic clans were structured. Patrilineal, male-dominated. Each man in a clan sharing the same Y chromosome. Kill the men, and you don't just win a battle. You erase a legacy. You delete an entire line of history. And they didn't stop with one village. These purges swept like brush fires. Small-scale, brutal conflicts repeated over generations. Tiny wars that ended in silence. What remains are snapshots of horror. In Herxheim, Germany, up to 1,500 people may have been cannibalized. Skulls split open, flesh stripped, bones turned into tools. This wasn't desperation. This was culture. This was ritual. This was annihilation made normal. And now we're left with questions no one wants to answer. Was this just one of many violent chapters in our past? Or was this the foundation of who we became? Because the truth is, the killers didn't vanish. Their children survived. Their genes spread. They built the future. They built us.
We've told you a story of war, of silence, of bones buried in cold soil, many without names. But this wasn't just their story. It's ours. Because whether we like it or not, we are the children of those who survived. And survival, in those days, meant something brutal. It meant taking. It meant killing. It meant silencing every rival bloodline until only yours remained. And here's the truth no one likes to say aloud. We exist because someone else didn't. You are here because another man's line was buried with him in a shallow pit 5,000 years ago. Maybe you come from the clan that struck first. Maybe you're descended from the victors who spared no one. Or maybe your ancestors were taken, not killed, but absorbed, their women stolen, their children raised under new banners. A quiet erasure, a softer kind of conquest. The past wasn't one clean war. It was 1,000 tiny collapses. It was fire and famine. It was love twisted by desperation. It was communities turning on each other, not because they were evil, but because they were afraid. And now, we walk the earth, imagining we've left all that behind. But have we? Look around. The lines may have blurred, the weapons changed, but the instincts, the tribalism, the urge to divide, conquer, hoard, still here, just beneath the skin. We carry the echo of those ancient decisions in our blood. We inherit not just their DNA, but their fears, their scars, and yes, their violence. Maybe that's the most chilling part, that we didn't end the story. We are still in it. And all the while, the forgotten rest beneath us, those whose names were never passed down, their songs never sung again, their futures cut short so that ours could exist. So the next time you look in the mirror, don't just see you. See the hundreds, maybe thousands, who didn't make it, so you could. You are a monument to extinction. You are the last chapter, in someone else's unwritten book. And if that shook you, if even a part of you felt the gravity of this story, subscribe. Not for me, but for them, for the ones who never got to tell theirs. We'll keep digging. We'll keep remembering. Because the past isn't gone. It's just waiting to be heard.